Hi there, Derek Walker from SMTI Consulting and Education. I just thought I'd bounce some ideas around today. Occasionally I'll have something come across my desk, quite an interesting job. It's one of the aspects I'm really enjoying about still working in the strata space, but having stepped away from the coalface strata management role. Now working in this consulting and education space has been really rewarding and an interesting way to utilise the knowledge that I've built over the last 16, 17 years and apply it in an entirely different way. Recently, I had a small job come across the desk that was looking at the ability for someone to redevelop or expand an existing lot in a strata scheme. So that is to look at redeveloping a lot within a scheme that is already established and operating. And I believe that it is an idea that has real, genuine benefits, and it is an option that many people could look at and just don't consider. Many people look at an existing established scheme and they just think, well, that's been built. My only option here is to buy and sell the existing lots, and that's it. However, there are some opportunities out there, some low-hanging fruit for redevelopment of lots within certain schemes, and one of those roles that I'm involved in is looking at the nuts and bolts to see, from a process point of view within that strata scheme, how might that work? What sort of hurdles would you need to jump over? Of course, in that process, looking at the general concepts and ideas, knowing the frameworks around the sorts of resolutions that need to be made in order to do that, that's the starting point. From there on, you have all of the other professionals along the way looking at planning, of course, architecture, permission with and dealing with local laws, and of course lawyers would need to be involved quite significantly. But as a starting point to look at the general concept of saying, well, I'm interested in this lot here, it actually has an enormous amount of airspace and land. Is there the ability to subdivide this existing lot? How might that look? And within the strata scheme itself, what would the process be for me to follow that idea through? And as an extension to that, another idea that's out there is the idea of looking at strata schemes that might have common property that is once again ripe for the picking to purchase and redevelop. And again, it's an idea that I don't think many developers out there really have this on their radar. I know through my dealings back in the day as a strata manager, there were plenty of client properties out there that had, in some cases, quite enormous common property that just simply wasn't being utilised at all. And I do ask the question, well, if a very large strata scheme was to carve off a piece of land and sell that for redevelopment, would that ultimately negatively affect the value, the saleable value of the individual lots? Of course, it's a question for the right professionals, valuers, or something along those lines. But I think it's a question that's well worth asking and something that people just simply don't consider. Many of the smaller scale developers out there are looking for an empty plot of land where a house could be pulled down or a house never existed, for example. But are there strata schemes that could be encouraged to carve off a piece of the common property, sell it with a unanimous resolution, and it could be redeveloped? Of course, there are many hurdles and hoops to jump through with a concept like this, but that doesn't mean it's impossible. Everything is possible. The only real unknown factor in there is, what is the dynamic amongst the lot owners? How would this idea be received? What sort of compensation would a developer need to provide in order to really encourage the owners? And it really, if it works out well, it's a situation where everybody could benefit quite significantly. In the inner ring areas of most of the major cities in Australia, the value of land in these areas is significant. It would be quite common to find situations where a portion of common property could be worth millions of dollars, and getting that sort of money on board for a strata scheme could make quite an enormous difference to the lot owners individually or to the scheme itself when you're looking at upgrading a building and stabilising the capital value at a time where the real estate market is a bit shaky in light of all of the turmoil around the world. I just thought I'd share this idea. It's a really fascinating one, and one, again, as I said, that no one really ever thinks about. What do you think? That factor of having the owners actually approve the idea of selling common property would, of course, be the biggest hurdle. My experience has been sometimes the most simple proposal could be shot down in flames, whilst at the same time in another property you could have a really complex idea that you'd think, well, there's no chance that'll get off the ground, and it'll be approved without anyone blinking. So those strata schemes having their own ecosystems and dynamics and and politics amongst lot owners is one of the biggest factors that you'd need to consider, and to some extent is out of your control. Interesting thoughts for the day. Thank you for listening. Bye.